Today is Friday, July 22. I'm Pastor Anthony, and this is Wilderness Wanderings. Today our text comes from Psalm 58. Do you rulers indeed speak justly? Do you judge people with equity? No, in your heart you devise injustice, and your hands mete out violence on the earth. And then from the final verses, the righteous will be glad when they are avenged, when they dip their feet in the blood of the wicked. Then people will say, surely the righteous still are rewarded. Surely there is a God who judges the earth. That's Psalm 58, verses 1 and 2, and verses 10 and 11. The world is full of injustice and violence. There is nothing new under the sun. This was David's complaint long ago. He didn't blame it on fate, evil, the devil, or any other divine or impersonal force. Instead, he blamed it on people, particularly on those with authority and responsibility to uphold justice and peace who had instead twisted the means at their disposal toward their own ends. We tend to be less precise in our blame for the evils of this world. Sometimes we see the hand of the devil at work. Other times it's a churn of impersonal systems that grinds people up in the gears. Still other times we might blame it on our leaders, whether or not they had something to do with the issue. Sometimes we simply blame it on the way the world is, which is akin to blaming it on fate. But Psalm 58 drives us back to facing ourselves as humans as the primary cause of injustice and violence in this world, particularly those of us who have some measure of power and responsibility for others. It is people who are wicked, and it would be difficult not to see ourselves in that condemnation, especially given David's description of the wicked in verse 3 that sounds eerily similar to the doctrine of original sin. The pictures painted throughout this psalm are pointedly graphic. The wicked are pictured as deaf cobras that cannot be tamed. They slither unrelentingly for their own benefit, using their power to bite and to poison. There is a prayer that God smash the teeth of these wicked, immature lions and cause them to disappear like water in the desert. And finally, at the end comes the most gruesome image of all, the avenged righteous dipping their feet in the blood of the wicked. These sharply contrasting images would remind us that there are many people, some of them among us and in our city, who face violence and injustice, that they cannot escape, where the lines are very sharp indeed between oppressor and oppressed. Some of us have felt this sort of helplessness ourselves. This psalm is the cry of anyone who finds themselves in just that position, as the innocent, afflicted one. But this is perhaps a good spot to remember that Jesus was also a righteous, innocent person, afflicted. The rulers devised injustice against him. They met out violence against him. Their wickedness, our wickedness as human people, became manifest against him, putting him to death on the cross. And this death of Jesus, the Lamb who was slain, but who became alive again, becomes the backdrop of John's vision in Revelation. As the battlefield image of blood-drenched fields from Psalm 58 is picked up by John, we take note that none of the violence of God that brings judgment and justice on the world is actual. No, Jesus' sword comes from the words of his mouth. And the only actual violence that shows up was the violence that Jesus himself absorbed from we human people, as displayed in the wounded but now living Lamb. Jesus himself took the punishment, the vengeance from God's justice that should have been directed at the wicked, even though he was righteous. And he did that so that we, the wicked, might become righteous. This is the shocking, humbling good news of our faith, that we, these sometimes innocent, sometimes wicked people, should receive the reward and vindication of the righteous. As you journey on, go with God's blessing. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever He may send you. May He guide you through the wilderness and protect you through the storm. May He bring you home rejoicing at the wonders He has shown you. May He bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.